Today, we will look at plenty of innovative ideas and engaging discussions around the real estate industry. To kick off, I am excited to announce the first panel, bringing together some of the industry's experts. All eyes and ears, Cyprus market dynamic. Please welcome the moderator, Christina Kokkalou, Managing Director at the IMR University of Nicosia, who will introduce the panel. Let's give her a warm welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's an honor and privilege to be here with you today and to be able to moderate such an esteemed panel of experts. We have 5 rounds of questions. We have a total of 40 minutes to cover our panel. Each panelist will have 2 to 3 minutes to answer each question. And I will allow me to start by introducing our esteemed panelists, starting from Constantinos Savvides from PwC, following Andreas Santis from NHC Capital, and Sergio, help me once again with your Gumeniuc from Dome Investment Company. So let me start my first question because we all know that the real estate sector is one of the fastest growing sector in our economy and very important in overall for our sector in Cyprus. And recent years, we have noticed that there has been an increased development and the trend has been amazing and compared to other sectors of the Cyprus economy. And I would really like your opinion and your expertise to explain to us what are the factors that had led to this increasing trend in the investment in Cyprus. If you would like to start, Constantinos. Of course.
Can you hear me? Is this working? Yeah. So, good morning, everyone. The reality is that in the past 18 months or so, we have experienced growth that I'm not sure anyone here was able to predict. It was unprecedented. It was the first time in 2022 that transaction values in the sector exceeded 5 billion in the history charts, at least according to our data. So if you asked me, I'm supposed to be an expert in this sector, if you asked me like 2 years ago, in the midst of COVID and in the aftermath of the CIP and all the troubles that came with it, no one would have expected that this is happening. So it's quite an interesting time to be talking about this sector in this country. Just to put some context to it, in 2022, we had a growth of almost 30% in values compared to the previous year. And even if you say, okay, the previous year was partly affected by COVID, it was almost 20% compared to 2019. That was a peak year for the investment program, right? So that must say something. Like we do forecasts all day long, we would have never gotten this right. Now you need to look at the details, and the details are around really circumstances and events that happen around us, not that we're driving. So that's I think a very interesting part of what we need to be focusing as a sector. We'll touch that later. But there was an already prevailing effort to get people in, to accelerate the headquartering efforts, to bring companies with their personnel in, because at the end of the day, we're talking about a market that has been and continues to be predominantly driven by foreign demand. We are just 800,000 population locally, and any growth or recessions comes from arrivals and departures of foreigners. So what we had dealt with now is looking at the Western countries suffering in the crisis of inflation, the energy crisis, and the food supply crisis, followed by the war in Ukraine, and all that. And we are seeing a country like Cyprus, how we can kind of benefit from these circumstances. Benefit is a controversial word, but how we can achieve growth through that. In this year, we saw something like 40,000, 50,000 people coming in. That's a 5-6% growth in the population of 800,000. So you have to imagine the Cyprus market has a housing stock that's supposed to accommodate its residents, right? And tourists. So what we had to deal with in a single year or maybe a year and a half is try to put 5-6% more than we had anticipated. Now, on top of that, we had to recalibrate the product because we've been focusing on for so long in a product that is no longer relevant. That's the investment program. So our construction sector has been doing and delivering that 2015, 16, 17, 18, and then all of a sudden this is no longer relevant. So the whole sector had to recalibrate, reposition, address the needs of the current market, and now that's why we see an influx of new development activity happening, etc. So in terms of what has been the driver, I think the summary is a demographic shock, and this combined with a demand-supply imbalance that existed from the reasons that I am referring to. Think of a house, from the moment you decide you need to put a product in the market, you push the button, it takes 3 to 4 years to have the keys, to get the permits and the construction, etc., at least in Cyprus. So you're not able to cope with this level of supply. It's sticky. And combined with the energy prices, construction costs, and the demand-supply imbalances, that's why we saw prices increasing, which is also an aftermath of what is being created now.
Thank you so much, Constantino. It's the first time that I'm happy that you did not know the forecast. You were wrong forecasting the. So that's very positive. Andrea, what would you say is the factors influencing this dramatic increase in the trend?
Okay, first of all, I need to say that Constantinos, by profession, he's an accountant, so he started with all these statistics and everything.
True.
And more or less, he left nothing for anyone to say. But, okay, Cyprus, I think, in general, has been very privileged with events that are happening in other destinations, either close to Cyprus or away to Cyprus, to benefit by the fact that it's located where it's located, it's a member of the European Union, and we have all experienced the increase in prices due to the investment program and obtaining the Cyprus citizenship. For me, what was a bit surprising is how quickly the market recovered, and most importantly is the fact that since the investment program was stopped, the demand based on real estate fundamentals came into force. So people now that are buying properties in Cyprus, either residential, either commercial, or as a second home, they buy not as a byproduct of a main product, but they are buying as the main product. And this is the most important and most encouraging. Also, I think the product of Cyprus has improved. We have improved on what is currently constructed. We see more branded residences, more branded mixed-use resorts, that they are becoming more appealing to foreign investors. If we also take into account the fact that for our neighbors, that they are not member of the EU and they feel that Cyprus is 40 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour's flight away, giving them the security of being into a European Union country, or even start their own businesses and transfer their operations and relocate with the tax benefits that are currently applicable. I think these are the major reasons why we have experienced this growth. What we need, however, to secure and safeguard is that we do not get, as we always do, greedy. Because when we see demand, when we see that there is interest, we focus on the short term and we ignore the long term. We ignore the benefits that people coming in Cyprus will create in the economy in general, and we try to make as much money in as short period of time, which is wrong. So it's extremely important for everyone involved in the real estate industry to understand and focus on that. As far as myself is concerned, I'm representing a US investment fund, which is probably the first investor of that type coming into Cyprus. And we can be a very good example for other institutional investors to come into Cyprus and upgrade the product and create more awareness of Cyprus away from the traditional markets that we are approaching. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Sergio?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm totally agree with Constantinos and Andreas, but I still have something to add. Firstly, I would like to highlight some keys that are important for Cyprus in global. First, I would like to mention that Cyprus has a strategic location. We are on the crossroads between Asia, Europe, and Africa. This makes Cyprus very attractive. Secondly, we still have a strong economy supported by three main factors: tourism, IT, and real estate, of course. As a third, we'll still have a permanent residence program. It's still running with the 300,000 investments plus the VAT. And unfortunately, we have an attractive Mediterranean with the beautiful beaches, with the beautiful mountains. I'm here today on behalf of the agency, but I represent Larnaca district. So I would like to say a few key factors about Larnaca. Why we're expecting a huge growth in this district. Firstly, we have a new marina project. It's a very big project with over 1 billion investments from local and foreign investments. So this will change Larnaca and bring it to another level. And secondly, we still have 2 sky towers projects in the Larnaca.
A bit closer.
Oh,
bit
sorry.
Closer, please.
Yeah, we still have 2 sky towers.
Just keep it close to you.
Yeah. We still have 2 sky towers.
Every time you say Larnaca goes off.
Yeah. Larnaca. Can you hear me now? So yeah. Another thing is the sky towers. One sky tower is already in process, under construction, and another one is an off-plan now. So these are the first sky towers in Larnaca. That will be a huge project with over 20 floors. So yeah, it will bring Larnaca to another level.
Thank you. Sergio, you went to my second question, which is very important, because we have you here as experts. The regions, you have already mentioned Larnaca. I don't know if Andreas or Constantinos would like. Andrea, yes?
Yeah, I just want people to understand
yes.
that Larnaca.
Of course. Besides Larnaca, that it's, we do understand the potential. Are there any other areas in Cyprus that we're going to expect future development?
No, only Larnaca.
Thank you very much.
Andrea, any other regions?
I don't know, but I need to say that as far as we are concerned, our investments are in Larnaca, actually. So it was not done on purpose, yes. But I believe Cyprus is such a small place. We have seen the amazing growth Limassol has experienced, and everyone can see the seafront of Limassol, how has developed. I think it's very important to create the infrastructure as well. It's not only the region, it's also the infrastructure, the facilities, the way of life. So we should not isolate the real estate and think that it's a product of its own. It takes much more for a real estate to be attractive. You need to have the services, you need to have the infrastructure. So this is extremely important for anyone to safeguard. And as I said, there are beautiful places in Cyprus, from Paphos all the way to Agia Napa and Protaras, up to the individual to see what is more applicable. We have seen developments of a different kind, like the Agia Napa Marina, other projects that either they have been completed or are in progress. And I think Constantinos is more expert to give some statistics and figures on the regions.
Yeah, Constantino, yes, if you could add some numbers behind this, behind the areas, like we said about Larnaca and Agia Napa Marina. Do we have any numbers showing this increase in demand for certain areas in Cyprus within approximately the next year?
Well, the driver, if you look at Q1 23, for example, since you want statistics, Q1 23, for example, there was a 37% growth from foreigners, right? 37 on a year-on-year basis compared to the first quarter of 22. Obviously, that is focused in the coastal areas, so that is highly concentrated in Limassol, Larnaca, and Paphos, even though proportionately the contribution of the city that you're both focusing has the biggest impact, proportionately. I think what this goes to show is that it's a market driven by foreigners, that I said earlier. But if you look at the detail, we are looking at also a stable domestic segment that keeps a hold of it because it's a bigger part of the market anyway. I want to add to that because I am not representing like any project or I'm not an investor, so in an advisor capacity. When we're doing, I'm doing M&A, corporate finance, and deals in real estate and hospitality. We've always tried to understand where are the trends, what's coming in, and how do we gauge interest from institutional investors. We, having a network like PwC, we're able to have access to different kind of markets and have a front row seat to what people need. And we also have a tool, there's a publication that we issue, it's Emerging Trends in Real Estate Europe. And if you see that, over the years, what it does, it goes, we talk to like 1,000 or so institutional investors, top-notch institutional investors across Europe, and we ask them, where do you think you're going to invest next year? What are the sectors that are in focus? And if you look at the sector chapter, there's a special chapter about real estate sectors. It's gradually moving away from commercial into residential. In 2015, 2014, it was offices and shopping malls, and it's gradually moving into resi, and then resi becomes niche. Social housing, assisted living, retirement living, branded housing, service house, private rented residential, which is a very underestimated sector in Cyprus. So we're looking at most of the institutional investors to hedge as a consequence of the economic crisis to move into niche resi space, which is something that's a great opportunity for the country, I believe. And this is where also we're trying to focus here. Branding is a big part of it, Andrea, because we don't have we haven't developed in that as much as we need to.
Thank you, Constantino. I will start with Andreas now. As we've said, it's important, and since you're like also in other countries, Greek and the Western Balkans as well, your company, I would like you to compare to those countries, maybe to sort of shed light upon this issue. What are the main advantages, but at the same time challenges for a foreign investor wanting to invest in Cyprus?
Okay, if we divide the challenges into different categories, the legal framework and the easiness to acquire a property, I would say more or less Greece, Cyprus, and the Balkan countries, the differences are minor. More or less, they are facing the same problems. What Cyprus has as an advantage compared to the countries that we are involved is that the British left to Cyprus a good heritage as far as land department is concerned. So any purchase is secured legally, so there are no disputes. For example, we are involved in Montenegro. We have bought a number of plots and joined them together, more than 50,000 acres of land. And now we are faced with issues because someone appeared and said that 30 years back, he was the owner of one of the pieces of the land. And you need to go to court, you need to prove that you have done everything in the proper way, you have done your due diligence, there was nothing behind it. So there are these kind of issues that can put a project into danger. With regards to Cyprus, I will say one of the issues compared, let's say, to Greece, apart from the fact that Greece is a bigger country, and if you acquire a property either in Athens or centrally, you have the option to travel to the islands, you have more opportunities of visiting places. I would say the major disadvantage of Cyprus is the accessibility. You can only access Cyprus either by air and very limited by sea, where the rest of the countries, either in the Balkans or even Greece, they have the option by car, they have different ways of accessing the country. But there is nothing perfect in this world. I wish it was. If you put everything in balance, I will say, for me, with my experience in those countries, Cyprus and Greece are a league above any of the other countries that I have been involved in.
Thank you, Andreas. Sergio, would you like to say any of the challenges your investors are faced with?
Yes, sure. As a real estate agent, I would like to mention the first challenge for the foreign investors, and this is the time frame. So I have the cases when the investor coming for 3 days in Cyprus only, and in these 3 days he need to do a viewings, to meet with the developers, and then to make a decision. So I strongly believe that that is impossible with a non-professional real estate agency. I would suggest just to contact a professional agency with a name, so the agent can arrange the viewing and make this happen. Another challenge, as I see for foreign investors, this is the limited size of our market. So for the investor who is targeting the locals, they may need to consider it. Yeah, it's pretty small. If we speak about advantages, I would like to mention that we have a highly infrastructure and it keeps growing. We keep developing the roads, the telecommunications, and also we have a very attractive tax system. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. Constantino, something you'd like to add on the main challenges?
No, in the interest of time, I want to add something different. I agree with Andreas' comments. Accessibility is a major issue, of course. But I want to focus a bit on the country's branding. I think our reputation as a country, as an investment destination, is twofold. On one hand, we see some very effective handling in dealing with the crisis and monitoring of our economy and dealing with the demands of new regulations from the Eurozone and how we're able to rebound the banking sector from a very deep crisis. So we are in order and we're behaving well. Credit rating agencies seem to be giving us the credit for that. We have in the recent year been cited as a country that responds very well to the particularities of the global energy crisis and all that. That's one aspect of it. The other is had a reputation that may have been tarnished following the what happened with the investment program and all those articles that were flowing around the world on our practices. I think one of the key aspects that we need to be focused in a coordinated way, the government, the key stakeholders from the investor side, the developers and every other stakeholder of this industry, is to keep the reputation of the country to the level that we deserve. Because the first thing that investors do, Andreas went through this process and he had to work rigorously because of his affiliation with the country, but the first thing that a US fund will do is check the country risk and understand what this country is all about. Is it safe? Is it dodgy? Is there a robust legal framework? And we're very fortunate to have inherited a robust legal framework and a robust land registry. But that's not enough. So I think my main focus here would be rebranding of the country's reputation.
Well, Constantinos, it's an excellent point, rebranding and trying to get the best out of our image to foreign investors. This comes to connect with my second question and my third question I wanted to tell you. What would you suggest? The branding, it's something that the government should tackle, but more than that, besides the branding, what other facilitation should the government do in order to be a more lucrative destination for foreign investment as well? What would you recommend? What would be the next touch points that the government should take in order to build the branding as well and make Cyprus a more lucrative destination regarding tax, regulations?
Well, I mean, the government has a key role to play as a stakeholder in this, not just in controlling but actually participating. So I think I would like to see a bit more public-private partnership models in the real estate sector, looking at what is the need right now. And the need right now is get more houses in, deal with affordability issues for the locals, revamp the coastal areas, the Larnaca front that we've been trying to revamp for so long, the Limassol part in the western part. So all these things need government interventions and they need government participation. I think if I become more specific, I think what the market is dealing with now, it's a transformation which is not a matter of whether there are enough flows of people coming in to support the real demographics, but it's whether we can cope, right? We're talking about a country which is 900,000, and we're talking about a size which is similar to Lebanon and Israel. We're talking about millions, right? So why can't we be 1.5 million, for instance? Why not? And the question is whether we can cope with it. How can we cope with it? It's not to have unexpected shocks from the demographic shifts that will boost prices up in a way where someone comes into the country, is not happy, cannot afford, and moves away. Because what we don't see in the data is people moving away after they come in. We only look at the positive data. So that's where I would like to see the government having tax and planning incentives for social housing, build-to-rent schemes, unbelievable. It's unbelievably untapped market, which has great prospects. No developer will buy the land, construct it, and then rent it, because they will recover their money in 20 years, right? You need government interventions. And if you add VAT to that, which you have to suffer, then that doesn't make sense. So why don't you kind of reconsider the VAT legislation when it comes to build-to-rent schemes, density bonuses? There are many countries in Europe that do that. So make developers look into that space to create more rental product to diffuse prices and make it more attractive. Because these people coming in, they don't just buy or rent real estate. They shop, and then they have to spend in the economy. You mentioned it earlier, Andrea. So I think that would be my highlight for this comment. Yeah.
Thank you, Constantino. Andrea, would you like to add something? Like
I would like to add, I think we should divide the government intervention into 2-3 different categories. One is the tax incentives related to real estate or to the people that they relocate to make them use Cyprus as their base, not to be their second home. For sure to create, again, tax or other kind of social incentives for the locals, but also polyotomic incentives. They need to give to people that they develop more flexibility on what they can do. I think currently our legislation is a bit rigid on these aspects. We need to see out of the box. We should not be focused and stay within 4 lines. We need to do something different. But my opinion is that we should not always look to the government. We have this tendency here, everything, when something goes wrong, is the government. We point the finger to someone else. First of all, we need to see ourselves. And we need all the people that they are involved into the real estate and hospitality industry. Exactly what Constantinos said before, rebranding Cyprus, putting Cyprus on the map of a destination that is luxury and what it offers. Here in Cyprus, unfortunately, in my opinion, we want to have everything of everyone. You cannot. You need to decide which direction you want to go. First of all, we need, as a country, to decide which kind of people we want to have in Cyprus, because we don't have unlimited space. We are not China. We are Cyprus. We are an island. So, and half of it is taken by the Turkish. So we need to be very careful in which direction we want to go and how to implement that, and have as a national strategy. Everyone is doing something different. No, we should set up a strategy of what kind of foreign direct investment we want, and then it's a second strategy with regards to the locals that we need to take care of them.
Wow, amazing. They're all very important suggestions, which I fully agree with you. Sergio, would you like to add something regarding the intervention? Just keep it.
This one is better.
Yes.
Thank you. So the most important thing that the government can do for Cyprus is just to keep our economy strong. Just invest in our infrastructure, invest in real estate field, invest in tourism, invest in IT. And also continuously and permanently reviewing the tax policies according to the real estate field, so that can attract their foreign investors. And also, by my opinion, I strongly believe that they have to review the Golden Pass program, learn some mistakes, and just renew it. I believe that will be huge for Cyprus. Thank you.
Okay, for me, the very interesting is the two. We should not blame everything, Andrea, to the government, which I agree with you, but definitely the government should help with at least the regulatory and the legal aspects to make more attractive. And another issue is hosting for the investors when they do come to Cyprus, Constantino, as you've mentioned. And now I would like to take advantage of your expertise and just give some advantage and your knowledge. When an investor comes to you and asks for advice, how would you advise him, like, so he could have the maximum, I know it's $1 million question now, maximum return on their investments? Or what are the most frequently asked questions in order to secure for them that they will get the maximum return on their investment? And let me start with the statistics next to me. If Constantino, I believe it's one of the questions most of your clients would ask you.
Yeah, so I think firstly, before considering any investment, you need to do proper due diligence, right? Where you're getting into, and that is, you mentioned it earlier. You have a robust land registry set up, but what you can build on that land and how you can build and when is a different story. So first of all, do proper due diligence about ownership and planning prospects. Planning prospects should be potentially divided into what is 100% realistic and achievable and what is a potential bet. We often see the second part being, given into context without the necessary risk assessments as well. Secondly, you need to assess whether this as a financing proposition, whether it's viable. So you need to understand whether the capital in terms of equity and the loan can be serviced from the cash flows and when, so as to have a viable and flexible capital structure and lending structure with the banks. Banks tend to be difficult if you don't structure their financing well with them. They become stakeholders in the project, so there needs to be coherence between what is a reasonable prospect of the property and what is a reasonable cash flow, and then through technical input, a lot of value engineering. How can I exploit pockets of value in their development? These are sizes, and you mentioned something a bit earlier about the rigid legislations. Having limits in the minimum size of an apartment is maybe ridiculous. You can't, because the market is changing. So you need to kind of exploit these pockets of value through value engineering with your technical experts, and remodel again until you kind of enhance your ROI. Speaking of ROI, just to add something, is that as a country dealing with institutional investors, we have been finding it difficult to attract in the core and core plus strategies like income generating office, income generating mall, retail, etc., because our yields are not very competitive for many reasons that I don't have time to explain. But you can match like 5-6% yield to what other countries with extremely high liquidity can offer. So most of the space where it's tapped for institutional investors, and that's where NCH also is tapping, is value add and greenfield, right? So inevitably, in order to satisfy your investors with reasonable returns, IRRs exceeding 15-20%, you have to go into value add and greenfield, which means it's more long term. And it's the due diligence that you need is even more of paramount importance. There is one aspect which is very, very hot at the moment in Europe, and it seems to be very relevant in Cyprus, is how you get not a brownfield or let's say greenfield like piece of land, but an old building and turn it into giving it a new identity. It's repurposing buildings. And because of affordability constraints that are happening across Europe and the crisis, it's, according to our studies, the number one direction to get prime assets, prime locations, older buildings that need a new identity. If we introduce as a country incentives as well to give new life to these buildings, because at the end of the day they are cells to the system of a city, and they're there dying and not offering anything. That's where you are able to get improved returns and better pricing. So repurposing of buildings is also a very interesting topic that the country needs to start focusing in a coordinated way, as Andreas mentioned earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Constantino. Andrea?
Yeah, this is a numerical approach of return on investment. You can see it from a different angle. I think return on investment very correctly analyzed by Constantinos on how and what an investor is looking for. But what is extremely important is return of investment in fact of quality, in fact of lifestyle, in fact of facilities, luxury, anything else that goes with it. So before you start, because investors is not only the institutional, so it's the people that they come to buy even a single property. So you need to look, at the end of the day, the end buyer is the most important person in this equation. With no end buyer, there is no land, there is no development, there is no due diligence, there is nothing. So it's extremely important, I will insist on that, it's extremely important to create the product that will upgrade the country, it will rebrand the country and bring the people Cyprus is wishing to bring. Upgrade our level, because we are, as I said, a small country, limited island. So it's extremely important to have these ingredients in place. Also, it's very important in a fast-changing world to be able to develop quickly. So this is where the government should get involved. Maybe some of the licensing processes to be given to individuals, and they will have the responsibility and the liability, even criminal one, if engineers, they approve something that is not according to the law and the legislation in order to speed up the process of developing a project. If the fundamentals of a project is in 2023 X, it doesn't mean that 5 or 6 years after, especially for a big project, will remain the same. Probably it will be out of date. So it's extremely important to be able to develop fast.
Thank you, Sergio.
It will be better, yeah. So Constantinos and Andreas mentioned the most important things. I can only repeat and add some comments as a real estate agent. So the most important thing in investment, that is the location. It's everything. So on the example of Larnaca, I'm suggesting to pay attention on the direction of growing of the town. For example, now this is Kiti, Pervolea, Tersifano. This is the first direction. Another one, this is Livadia with Aroclin in Pila. So if we're picking up a nice off-plan project in the prospective location, that can make investment successful. Secondly, it's important to proceed with an old developer with their history and reputation. Before buying any property, I'm suggesting to meet with developers to see his finished project, because you can see and feel the quality. And last but not least, the real estate agency. Also important which real estate agency are you contacting. Here's the same thing as with the developers. I'm just suggesting to proceed with an old real estate agency with a history, with the comments and with the reviews to make your investment successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. Thank you so much. For me, I would like to summarize what the most important is. I truly agree with Constantinos and Andreas, as well as you, Sergio, the need to rebrand Cyprus as a lucrative destination for foreign investment, wherever the government should intervene to make, as time is an issue, to make the process all move faster. And more importantly, of course, experts, data. Constantino, you shared light in such a short time on the trends in Cyprus. I would like to thank each one of you for today sharing with us your wealth of knowledge, your expertise, your experience. And because we have a couple of minutes, if you want just to give a closing remark from each one of you. We have exactly 3 minutes. 1 minute to each one of you. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think in summary, unprecedented growth, which now means we are going through a transformational journey, and this takes good coordinated effort between all stakeholders to achieve our goals without neglecting the fundamentals and without neglecting the end product of real estate. There are, at the institutional level, areas in which there are great opportunities that are relatively untapped, and I'm referring to niche resi that I mentioned earlier, and also we would expect to see some incentives coming in to create a product that is much needed right now, build to rent, an example of that, repurposing older buildings, etc. Yeah, that's all from me.
Thank you, Constantino. Andrea?
I would like, first of all, to thank you for being here, for having the patience to listen to us. If I was in your position, I don't know if I would have stayed. So have a great time, enjoy the expo here, and I'm sure there is plenty to see.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today. At the end, I would like to say that Larnaca is the most important destination in the Cyprus and most attractive. What I say to my clients when they ask what is Larnaca, I'm saying two things. The first one is that Larnaca is a Limassol 10 years ago. And the second thing, that Larnaca is like Bitcoin in 2015. Don't miss it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. And one last thing. Special thanks to the organizers, Ultimate FinTech, for an amazing organization. Thank you all so much, and enjoy the rest of the expo. Thank you.